everyone. I'm here to present my literature review on neurodivergence in our classrooms. So we have lots of research to go over, so let's just dive right in. So this is our introduction, and our question is, how does neurodivergence affect our classroom teaching? So I want to start us off with some key points that we're going to talk about throughout this presentation, and we're going to need to remember long after this presentation is over. So the instruction has to be intentional for everybody. That's a major tenet of teaching. But most importantly, it's very, very important that your teaching for neurodivergent students is differentiated and intentional. Everything you do should have a purpose for them and be specifically tailored to their needs. So, another key point that's reiterated through a lot of the articles that I researched is that you have to focus on the positive. You cannot just worry about what they can't do. You need to focus on what they can do and turn their strengths into the main point of their learning. So, as noted before, you're going to have to differentiate, but that doesn't mean that they have to be taken out of the classroom or excluded from certain activities. Differentiation can still be inclusive. And we want inclusive classrooms so that every child in our classroom feels like a part of the family, whether that means they're neurodivergent or not. Okay, so now we're going to get into our literature overview. So I had 5 sources. 2 of them were scholarly, and 2 of them were from education magazine articles, and then we had 1 ebook. So all 5 sources explore how different facets of neurodivergence in the classroom, some ways to best facilitate learning for the neurodivergent students, and how it can affect instruction. It's important to note that all of the sources are recent, published within the last 10 years, that is, so all the information should be up to date. So my findings. So from the Babul article, the main point of that article was that you, as noted earlier, you have to focus on their strengths and not their weaknesses. She talks about in the articles how you need to really focus on what your students can do. Don't focus and get bogged down on what they can't do. Focus on what they can. So it was noted in Shaw's article as well that, as noted earlier, special education does not have to segregate them from the other students. You can take your neurodivergent students and leave them in your classroom, and you can make them feel included. And there are ways to do that. And it's a lot of that has to do with your attitude. If you treat them like they're different, then they'll pick up on that. So you need to make sure that you're differentiating for them, but don't treat their different as bad. Different isn't bad. So another thing that was noted by Sewell was that understanding a learner's strengths and their weaknesses is what is key to crafting the learning plan. If you don't understand their strengths and you don't understand their weaknesses, then you can't help them. And that goes for every student, not just the neurodivergent ones. And it was noted in the ebook, one of her major points as well, was that you have to beware the labels. When you start looking at the labels for your students, the neurodivergent students, they're going to know, and you're going to let the stereotypes, that's going to affect your teaching, it's going to affect how you treat them, and you can't do that. Children don't need to be bogged down by a label. You do need to understand what their needs are and how you can help them, but don't get so caught up in the labels that you forget that you are crafting a plan for that child. Don't think of them as, oh, this is my student and he's dyslexic, for example, and that's his whole identity, because he's more than his label. He's more than the neurodivergence. So why did I pick these articles? These articles were all up to date and recently published, as noted earlier in the slideshow. And it's also important to note that all of these articles are written by authors who specialize in educational fields. Several of them are doctors. Several of them actually specialize as well in special education. One of the authors specialized in the Montessori methods. I don't know if everyone's familiar with those, but it's an educational style. It's big on self-learning, and that article is very informative and talks about how we can combine Montessori with special education. So the major takeaways as we bring this presentation to a conclusion. One of the quotes from the Armstrong magazine article was that we should give neurodiverse students the most innovative ideas that education has to offer. So the point of that being is education is constantly changing, and that's true for how we educate neurodivergent students as well. Do not get hung up on the way things have always been done. You need to keep innovating, keep learning, keep growing so that you can keep helping those students as we get more and more information about what works for them. Remain innovative in your classroom. Huge. Focus on their strengths. Do not get bogged down by the weaknesses. Focus on what they can do. Get to know them and find out what they're good at and clear a path from there. And then differentiation, you need to differentiate for them. You have to. That's your duty as a teacher, but do not make it segregated for them. And stay flexible. That's important as a teacher, but especially as a teacher of neurodivergent students. Be ready to switch up your plans. And here are my references. And I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation and I hope you learned something. And thanks for listening. And please take this information to heart. Thank you.